Hey, everybody, this is Sean from the Saving Your Future podcast. Thanks for joining this week. Today, we wanted to talk about the concept we're hearing about a lot, which is early retirement. Lots of people are talking about, can I retire by 35? Can I retire by 40? Can I retire by 50? And, we'll talk about how that could be possible and what other ramifications there might be. This particular episode of the podcast is actually brought to you by Audible. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes below where you could get a free trial membership to Audible as well as 2 free books. So hopefully you'll check that out as well. Thanks for listening to the podcast this week. And what I wanted to talk about is essentially the idea of retiring early. So there's a lot of people that want to do that. And, I get it. It makes sense. Hey, who wants to work till, you get to the point where, hey, what am I going to do now? I'm not going to enjoy my formidable years. I'm going to sit around and just watch TV, and not really enjoy it. So I get the concept for sure. And, the more time you can do what you want to do, the greater. However, I think most people that have the drive to really get themselves to the early retirement probably have something else that they want to do. So they might figure ways early on to create passive income that'll continue to flow in through retirement. So let's say you're able to save 500 grand in a 401k and 500 grand in taxable accounts that can draw from currently, because that's the downside if you have it all in a 401k or all in a deferred retirement plan that you can't pull out of. How would you be able to pay for your daily expenses if you had most of the money tied up in a account like that? So that's why it's important to have liquid cash, and then also to not just have it in a bank account where inflation is going to outstrip what you're actually making. You do have to have some level of investments that might have some risk, and then obviously some that would, have a component to it that would not necessarily be risk, but would be able to provide income to you. The other thing I think you'd want to do is keep up certain skills or build new skills, because at some point in time, you may want to do some freelance work. You may want to do something that brings you back into the workforce or into some kind of projects, whether it be consulting or such, even if it's something that you're just doing a couple hours a week, or, whether it be a podcast, even like I'm doing, or conversations with somebody where you're sharing your information in a consulting type of way. Those are definitely ways that you can supplement your retirement, your early retirement, and some things that you can do from almost anywhere in the country now that you have internet. As we kind of established, you'd probably need somewhere around $1 million to really be able to do that. Then from there, you're going to want to, like I said, be able to structure that and take a look at it so that you're maximizing the return that you have, but also protecting your capital. And do you really believe, based on your budget, would you be able to actually make it through without having to, without running out of that money? Can you live on a lot of the income generation that your portfolio has? And how much of it per year are you actually bringing down? So if you had $500,000 and you live on $100,000 a year, simple math, obviously not considering the growth of that portfolio, you got about 5.5 years before you run out. So can you live on $50,000? What's the income that your portfolio is generating? And what is the amortization schedule within the taxable funds that you currently have, not the tax deferred? And then can that money make it for you until you're about 60, I'd say maybe even 65, when, whether it be Social Security or drawing down on your 401k or IRAs come into play. Obviously, if you have 500 grand today and you're a number of years out, you're 40 years old thinking about retiring, then you have that 15 to 20 years for that 500 grand to double, and then maybe even double again, and put you at 1.2, 1.5 million, something like that, which should potentially get you to where you need to go. So how do you make sure that you have enough? Well, one of the things to do is just really put together a budget. Calculate, what are the costs that I'm going to need? One of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about is, when you're working, many companies provide you some level of health insurance or other benefits. So have you factored that cost, $1,500, $2,000 a month, into your budget? Have you considered, well, I'm going to travel. How much is my travel budget going to be? Food, shelter, all these other components. Have you considered them? Maybe you have a house and you say, well, hey, I can downsize that and, pull a $50,000, $100,000 of equity out and maybe buy an RV and travel the country. Possible, right? Now, another question to consider is, what happens if we have a bad market? How much money could you potentially afford to lose from your account and still be able to continue in that early retirement, in that lifetime retirement? Talking about, for example, if you had 500 grand and an average return of 4%, considering inflation and taxes and everything like that, you could probably last around 20 years with that 500 grand. Is that enough? Is that something you can do? How can you stretch your money a little bit further? Clearly, there's two things you can do, right? One is to increase your income, and the other one is to reduce expenses. What are your hobbies? Can you turn any of those hobbies into income? And, what are you really going to do with your time? Let's say, you retire and you get yourself, you go out for a year, you travel the world, you travel around the country, or you do certain things. What's next? Because most people that you know are not actually retired. They're going to be working. So you're going to have a lot of free time that you need to do something with. To entertain yourself, generally, it's going to be something that costs money. Can you look at other skills to develop, invest in other things besides stocks and bonds, but also potentially real estate? How can you manage passively, let's say, a real estate portfolio, or invest in other businesses that might have a situation where you can have the right people there hired to run the business, and you could be in the background as a management consultant to that business and take a percentage of it. I would love to hear in the comment section below what your thoughts are as far as how you would potentially retire early. What are your motivations for retiring early? Do you enjoy what you're doing, or are you just looking for something else to do? Well, I'd say as much as it's an interesting concept, I'll tell you that I would love to hear people that have retired early. What have they done? Have any of you actually gone back to work? Have you done freelance or side projects? What do you do with your time? Do you just travel all the time? Do you sit at home? What could you spend necessarily? My understanding from calculations I've done and articles I've read, you probably have to live on about 40 grand a year. Is that something you can afford to do? Most of the time, if you have a mortgage, the answer is going to be no. Insurance and such, add up all the costs that you have. Are you really ready for retirement? Make sure you're sure before you hand in that resignation. Thanks so much for listening to the Saving Your Future podcast. On this podcast, we talk about all kinds of personal finance related topics, everything from saving for a rainy day to buying a car to buying a house, and importantly, saving for retirement. So thank you so much. We'll check you out in the next episode.